topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Barry G. Fowler, EA, brings you Tax Talk for You right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. As an enrolled agent and a national leader in tax resolution, as well as trucker bookkeeping and tax planning with over 30 years of experience, Barry will break down taxes, bookkeeping, tax planning, and tax relief for individuals and businesses just like you. So let's have some Tax Talk for You with your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, good morning, and it's another great Monday to be here talking taxes and trucking and small businesses, you name it. If it relates to taxes, we're going to be talking about it. So if you got questions, feel free to send us some messages or jump on in. Let's get your questions answered. Let's help you be better at what you need to do for business and personal to save money on taxes. Nobody likes paying taxes, so why not just find the ways to reduce your taxes to the lowest amount allowed by law. Hey, today's a great day. We're celebrating Columbus Day. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And that's the way we always learned it. Remember, when Columbus came and discovered the Americas. And, if he hadn't been so driven to prove that the earth was round and not flat where you just fall off the ends, Americas wouldn't have been discovered then. It would have been discovered at some point in time because of all the, modernization and everything else that's happened over the years. But this great country, some 200 and some odd years later was founded. So, that's fantastic. It's a great day to celebrate and enjoy, that the Americas were discovered back in 1492. But just the same as he wanted to do discoveries, and he wanted to find ways to prove that the earth was round, we want to find ways to reduce the burden of taxes for you, especially, those people, in business, those people that are running trucking companies. So, how do you do that? How do you find ways to save money on taxes? Well, when I go to OOIDA, Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association, and I speak at their seminar called Truck to Success. Now, normally we'd be having that coming up here this month. They've had to cancel it because I didn't have enough people wanting to jump out and be an owner operator, which, I understand. It's a tough business right now with fuel prices being up and that load costs, what you're able to charge for loads being down, and people taking loads just to try to cover payments, which isn't the right thing to do. You've got to keep a fair price so that it keeps the industry afloat, not just you, but if you're only breaking even, you're not paying yourself. You're just doing work just to pay your note, and that's it. Well, that's not keeping yourself afloat. That's not paying your bills. So, all this has happened in the industry, and the industry has been kind of in a decline because of that. It's a tough business to make money in being an owner-operator. So, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of that session that we would do. Now, we don't have as much time as I have when I'm speaking at Truck to Success, but we want you to be successful. Now, when we talk about mistakes that cost truckers thousands upon thousands of dollars, in taxes. And it's one of the biggest mistakes even all business owners make is bad or no bookkeeping. Now, can you imagine running your business with bad or no bookkeeping whatsoever? If you have bad or no bookkeeping, you're missing deductible business expenses. You would have incomplete bookkeeping. Now, when you're in trucking business and maybe you're leased on, you got settlement statements. And you got some people doing bookkeeping that have never read a settlement statement, don't even know what it is. And then if you don't read your settlement statement, you don't know what deductions are coming out of the gross trucking revenue that you're receiving. You're just looking at the bottom line. You didn't look at your insurance costs that they may have hit you. You didn't look at chargebacks they may have hit you with. You didn't look at what your fuel costs are. So you got to read those settlement statements right there just to understand what money you're getting from your business. And then, bookkeeping done by somebody that doesn't know your industry, your business, trucking business, we see it all the time. And, when you got somebody that doesn't know the ins and outs of the business that you're in, sometimes they're missing very valuable deductions. And you don't want to be in that kind of situation to where you're missing deductions because somebody doesn't know the deductions you should be getting for your business. And then we talk about bookkeeping that are done by those who only care about their own bottom line and not about yours. See, we take an interest in your business. We want to see you be successful. So we kind of look at your bottom line. What's happening? Are you increasing? Are you decreasing? What has been an issue? Can you compare this month to last month? This month to the same month last year? Year to date this year to compare it to that same period last year? And see, this is all the information that you can get when you have somebody good at doing bookkeeping that helps you run your business. Now, one thing that I've seen in this industry is there are some companies that take shortcuts and they produce a financial statement, sort of, and it's more upon a cash flow statement. That means you're not getting a true profit and loss. You're getting, hey, this is where cash went. But that only helps you so much. See, good financials has a balance sheet, has an income statement or a profit and loss statement, has comparisons, has a good cash flow statement. So you can see all of this as a business owner to help make sense of what's happening in your business. See, it's your business. You've got to take a step back periodically, look at what's happening in your business. Where's my money going? So cash flow statement is good for that. It shows you, hey, this was our gross revenue. This was the expenses that went out. This is the cost that went out to pay for debt, principal, interest, capital improvements, increasing if you have a business that takes inventory, then increasing your inventory. All these things can be keys to running your business, but having a good profit and loss is what's going to help you run your business, understand your business, and then you can go from there. So that's kind of the big thing out there. I mean, when you're looking at a profit and loss, of course, you're looking at your gross revenue at the top, but then you've got all your expenses. And so we kind of do things a little bit differently. So we use the cost of service. So what's it going to be to run your truck on the road for every load, every month as you're going? So you're going to see our financial statements that you see profit and loss with. you're going to see gross trucking revenue, and it may be broken down by several items. You may have other items that come in besides the gross trucking that you're paid for out there. And then you're going to have your cost of service, maybe your fuel costs, your truck maintenance, your tolls, your scales, and all your other expenses for you to operate that truck on the road. Now, this next section is going to be more of general administrative overhead and all the other costs out there. So, costs that you're going to have, whether that truck is out there running or not, like your insurance cost is going to be the same, whether you have that truck on the road or not. You're going to have a cost for you, whether it's payroll, or if you're an S corp, or payroll for contractor or your employees, or you may have subcontracting work, and that's going to be up into the top section is cost of service. So these things are what's going to become important to you to be able to run your business and understand what you need to do to help yourself in business across the board. Now, we want to make it simple. And sometimes you just want to do it yourself. You think you can save money doing it. So what we suggest is we have a great bookkeeping system. It's called Keep It Simple. And we're going to go through keeping it simple bookkeeping right after this break.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for You. If you owe the IRS or are going through an IRS audit, don't go at it alone. Call Taxation Solutions Tax Relief at 888-930-1016. We are your solution for IRS debts, audits, back taxes, garnishments, liens, and levies. Whether you're an individual or business, you need a solution and a strong, aggressive tax resolution. Don't let the IRS walk all over you. Stop the IRS now. Call 888-930-1016 or go to taxationsolutions.net now for a free, no obligation consultation. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, welcome back. Talking trucking, talking keeping it simple. When we're talking income statements, and we're going to get to keeping it simple here in just a minute, we're talking income statements. We're talking about service revenue at the top, gross trucking revenue, your bonuses, detention, maybe fuel surcharge, things that are going to be, there in revenues and stuff. And we had a question about cost of service. What else could we include in cost of service? Of course, we talked about fuel and scales and tolls, truck maintenance. DEF is a really a good one to have in there. We run a complete chart of accounts that you would say is probably pretty extensive in that, we want to make sure that we're including every single thing, possible in your costs. You're going to have also possibly reefer fuel, broker fees, additives, lumper, escort fee, mileage charges, maybe have inspections or an overweight fee, transit damage, subcontracted services, travel for your drivers out there, especially like your if you're paying subcontractors, it's going to be in subcontracted pay, but you may have drivers out there and you got travel for them. All those things are going to be kind of included in what we would call cost of service. So, we kind of break it down really small so you can kind of see what you're spending money on in the business to keep it, visible, understandable, and readable. Because what you really want to do is make sure you've got readable financials that will help you uh, guide your business down the road. See, you use a GPS to get from point A to point B. Well, your financial statements should be your GPS to financial success and determining exactly what you need to do or are doing in business. Now, we're going to talk about keeping it simple. Keeping it simple means keeping it simple. Save every receipt for your business. Open a separate checking account for your business. So, you may be a DBA and you think, oh, I can just run everything underneath my family checking account. No, you just got too many things going on in there. You really want to keep it separate, business from personal, so that hey, everything going through this account is my income, and everything going out of this account would be towards my expenses and everything. Hey, Kelly, great question. Would this information apply to all businesses? Absolutely. Now, when we talking about the financial statements we were talking about, those are set up specifically around a trucking business. Now, if you are a independent contractor and you're a service business, you might want to set up your financial statements similar way. Now, if you're in a retail or manufacturing business, then you've got a separate sort of chart of accounts that you would use that distinguish cost of goods sold as opposed to like cost of service that we're talking about. So, hey, I'm going to try to stay up to date with questions as they're coming in. Frank, this is another great question. If you are an owner and driver, should we know all these things just starting out? Well, what I would tell you to do is, hey, give us a call at truckertaxtools.com. Let us get started helping you in your trucking business from day one. And yes, you should know this stuff starting out. When I go to speak at OOIDA's Truck to Success, I'm there speaking about this to people that are just coming out or just deciding they're going to be in the trucking business. And so, yes, we want them to learn and understand, and then give us that phone call and let us help guide you through the business itself. That's why we're one of the most recommended bookkeeping and tax companies for truckers, is because we take and we help the truckers all down the road so that they guided the right way through business. So just give us a call at 877-966-2477. Again, 877-966-2477. And we'll get you on our very low cost bookkeeping service so that we can keep you and guide you down the road. So we were talking about keeping it simple. So, open that separate checking account for your business. If you become an LLC or an Inc., the bank's going to require you to have a separate checking account. I always tell you, never commingle funds, never write checks out of the business or use the funds directly from the business for personal use. You want to transfer funds from the business account to the personal account for personal items. Don't ever commingle that. It becomes a real pain for you if you're an LLC or a corporation. Our attorney friends, and I'm not an attorney, never want to be an attorney, don't charge legal fees, tell me all the time, you start commingling that, you lose that corporate veil, you lose any protections you may have out there. We also tell you to use a separate credit card for business expenses. Now, if you can, get a credit card in the business name. Now, you may get a fuel card, or you may get one of these other saving cards out there that you can use for your trucking business. and that would be separate underneath the business name. But if you can't get a separate credit card in the business name, designate one card that's personal that is only used for business as well. That way you can track everything through there. You know everything going through that card is purely business and nothing else. So you want to separate that and keep it separate, and it helps keep your life a little bit simpler. You know that's the card you're going to go to look for the other expenses that you may have for the business. Get a notebook to carry with you and pocket folders so that you can record every receipt, and you can put receipts into those expanding folders and make sure you're keeping all the receipts. Now, I tell you, a lot of times make pictures of them because you can see those receipts these days after a few months, man, it being in the heat or whatever, they fade away, and you won't know what it is, and you'll be going, God, what was this for? Especially if you've got, using cash or something like that. You want to make sure you're got those documented above and beyond anything else, because at least receipts or something that's been charged on a credit card, you can go through and make sure that you've got everything tracked that way. Track your loans. Hey, I'm going to give you a hint. Before you sign a loan or you sign a lease on a truck or anything else, for that matter, for equipment purchases or anything else you do in your life, read it. Read it. Ask questions. What's the actual cost of buying this truck? What's the interest rate? What's it costing me to do this? Look at the cash purchase price versus what you're going to pay over the long term. What's my buyout at the end? You got to make sure you're reading. And I stand in a soapbox and preach this to new truckers, even people that are doing bookkeeping and taxes with us currently. We preach this to them consistently. Read before you sign. Even our engagement letters, we tell you to read it before you sign it. We want you to know what's in it. Even though we go through it and tell you about it, you got to read it to understand it. As my dad always says, if you don't read, you get what you get, and you can't throw a fit. At least when you read it, you know that, hey, I'm agreeing to this and it's fully understandable to me. Save your records. Hey, we had a question from Larry. How long do you keep receipts? Well, IRS will tell you should be keeping support for your tax returns for about 7 years. Now, I'm going to tell you your receipts aren't going to last that long. Very seldom do I have an IRS agent that has gone through an audit with me that will ask for actual receipts behind things unless it's a large purchase. Then, hey, if it's a couple $1,000s here, 5,000 or 10,000, they may ask for the receipt. So you might want to have pictures and put them in, hey, you can use folders in your phone. Those are really nice things to do. Speaking of phone, before it rings, I got to turn my ringer off here. But you can use file folders on your phone by year and put your pictures over there for the year, so you have them if you need them. So, but it's about 7 years. Now, if it's a major purchase, and it's until 7 years after you sell it. So it could be something you keep a little bit longer, but we work through that. Hey, I've got a few more questions that have come up in here, and we're going to talk more about basic, keeping it simple bookkeeping for your business, whether you're in trucking, whether you're a small business out there. We want to try to find ways to help you keep it simple. And we'll answer those questions and go through more of this right back after this.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by, as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for You. As an owner-operator, you already spend too much time away from your family. Trucker Tax Tools handles all your bookkeeping and taxes no matter what level trucker you are. Life on the road can be taxing, but that doesn't mean that your wallet or time with your family should suffer. Trucker Tax Tools makes your life run smoothly. Go to truckertaxtools.com for a free guide that will give you the tools to never worry about your taxes again. Call Trucker Tax Tools at 877-966-2477 or go to truckertaxtools.com now and let the experts keep you trucking. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, welcome back. We got some other good questions that come in. Got a couple we'll fill in as we're going through and talking about bookkeeping systems and how to make it and keep it simple. The simplest way is giving Trucker Tax Tools a call and let us get you set up in our bookkeeping. We start as low as $25 a week for Trucker Bookkeeping. We're running some great promotions right now. We have a great billboard out on Highway 12 out in Louisiana with some great information. So hopefully if you've seen that, call us. Call us if you've seen it, even if you're not going to use this for bookkeeping. Hey, if you're out there trucking and you see the billboard, call us and hey, just give us a thumbs up or something that says, hey, I saw the billboard and everything. But we had a question for James. From James, what if you are just about to start out in business but don't have things set up just yet? Do you have to get the separate accounts, and how do you get accounts without documentation? Well, James, if you're in the startup phase, you're not going to have that separate account yet. So, once you set up your DBA or your LLC or your corporation, and then you get the employer identification number, then you can get that checking account in the company name. Now, that being said, you're going to possibly have expenses before you even have that account. Now, those expenses are going to be considered startup costs. Now, best thing to do is track those. Maybe do a folder that says startup costs on it. And as you're spending money for like incorporation fees, maybe you're driving to go see a lawyer, maybe you're doing some pre-work to determine if this is the right business for you. You're out looking for maybe a truck. You're looking for a location. You're looking for storage or parking. And you're driving. You want to keep track of those miles, all those business miles to and from the house. And get a log and log all those miles. Maybe you had to buy pre-supplies and stuff like that before you were getting all set up. So you're going to want to track all that. Now, I don't recommend you buying that truck until you get the LLC, put the LLC's name on it or the corporation's name on the truck, and you can start from there. That way, you've got your I's dotted and T's crossed, and then when you go to your bookkeeper or your tax guy, hey, these were my startup costs, and you can total those up, and it's going to be total startup costs. And then we can take the appropriate deduction for startup costs on your taxes. So there are some limitations in that, and it varies by year and what's happening, but we'd be able to sit down and get that information and be able to take those deductions, where we go. Now, I promise, hey, keeping it simple. Here was the example I used at Truck to Success. Very basic record keeping procedure for you as an owner operator, and you can do this as a small business person. You buy that expanding folder, you go down to an office supply store, you get a stapler, desktop calculator with a register tape. You fill out the pocket labels with various categories of expenses and income, such as maintenance or meals and fuel, equipment, settlements, office supplies, etc. And then when you get a receipt, you just reach down, find the right section, drop in the receipt into that pocket. Now, at the end of every month, you take those receipts out, you total them up, staple them together, put a total on them, and now you've got total for office supplies for the month. You've got a total for fuel for the month. You've got your total for revenue for the month. fuel for the month. So you made it simple. And now you can actually put it into a spreadsheet and help determine what you need or what you have as net income. So it can be that simple. Now, do I recommend doing it that way? No, you don't have time on your hands to do this. You don't know what you're doing. Get a good bookkeeper that's in the trucking business that does it. And that's something you should start as soon as possible. So really, when I'm looking at questions that come in, Jennifer asked a question, what kind of expenses can I take as an owner operator? Well, Jennifer, we talk about the most overlooked truck driver deductions. So, some of these things are really simple and really easy, such as, fuel and truck maintenance and tolls and scales. But the things that you do sometimes miss, they may seem like small items, but remember, if you're a small business person and you're running a DBA and you're a sole proprietor and you're reporting on Schedule C, or you're a single member LLC reporting on Schedule C, your bottom line of your business gets first taxed at 15.3%, Social Security and Medicare. So if you netted $100,000, you're paying $15,300 just in Social Security and Medicare tax before you get to the federal income tax side. And only half of that 15.3 is deductible for federal income tax. So every dollar you save, or every $100 you gain in expenses, saves $15 at a minimum in your pocket, plus whatever the federal income tax. So even if you were taxed at the lowest tax bracket, you're saving 25 cents on every dollar, or $25 on every 100. So it becomes important to do that. It's money saving items. Okay, so what items are those? Association dues. If you paid to become part of the association of OOIDA, Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association, deductible. Your bank fees, whatever the bank's charging you. Now, I tell you to watch those bank fees. I've seen bank fees higher costs than sometimes professional services out there. So if you're running NSFs on your account, those fees become very, very high. Some banks are still charging a monthly bank charge. Watch that. Maybe you're banking at the wrong bank. Find a new bank that isn't going to charge you. Your cell phone or internet plans. Now, cell phone plans themselves are only deductible for what you're using for business. So if you have a straight line that's just for your business, that's 100% deductible. Now, if it's a business and personal, maybe you're using it 80-20, maybe 50-50. So you got to look at what your usage is on that phone and then deduct the portion that is applicable to the business. But it is a deduction that some people overlook. Coffee pot for the truck, it's deductible. Any certifications you need, hazmat certifications, things like that, you're going to be able to take that deduction. Calculator, cleaning supplies for the truck. Something as simple as chains that you need or required to have for the truck. Envelopes, your stapler. Hey, guess what? Professional services such as tax and bookkeeping services. Our services are deductible. So it gives you that additional tax deduction. Any licenses or fees that you're going to incur, your fire extinguisher, ice scrapers. And people laugh about this because I'm sitting here talking about it, but the little things that you have to replace periodically, hey, if it costs you $10 for it, and you're going to be hit at 25% tax, doesn't that money save Doesn't that save you $2.50? You had to buy it anyway. Take the deduction for it. Excise taxes. Hey, road atlas. All right. Funny joke about the road atlas is it's paper. We all know that. But how good is a GPS sometimes out in the mountains and different places? Sometimes you might need it. Most truckers that I've ever talked to have a road atlas. I carry one in my truck. My kids go, what is this? Well, I taught them how to read a map. Dad, I got GPS. Your GPS doesn't always work everywhere. And sometimes you just need to be able to read a map to know where you're going, where you're at, and how to find the next exit or the next stop, and maybe the back road that gets you around all of it. That maybe your GPS isn't going to guide you down. We were taking a road trip and heading to Branson, and going through Arkansas. They were doing some major construction, and there was a 2-hour delay on the major roads. Well, my wife was able to pull out the road map and guide us using that road atlas to get around it all, and something the GPS did not show us. So it saved us almost 2 hours of at least sitting in that traffic. It took us a little bit more time because it was some back roads, but we enjoy the back roads. So it was something fun. It was something good. And it was a learning experience, with the kids, showing them how you can find the different routes to get around things like this that are traffic oriented. And of course, your fuel and your truck operating expenses are all deductible. Paper, pens, envelopes, insurance, but not life insurance. Now, you could deduct life insurance, and maybe it's maybe you got a partner and you need the insurance between the two of you for buy-sell agreements and stuff like that. I don't recommend that being deductible, because then the proceeds from the life insurance is supposed to be taxed. So you kind of need to avoid that portion. Interest expense is deductible, but the principal is not. So if you're paying on your truck, or you're paying on a capital improvement, or you're paying on its real estate or building or something, the principal is not deductible. It comes off the loan balance. The interest is deductible. Any labor, your leases. Now, leases have two categories: operating or capital. Operating is directly deductible expense. Capital, you capitalize the fixed asset and depreciate it, so you don't get the lease expense. Now, a portion of that lease expense would be interest, and therefore you would take the interest part as a deduction. License fees, maintenance and repairs, DOT, medical exams, safety gear, and things like that are all deductible. So you want to be looking for every kind of expense. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about other expenses and what is required by the IRS to make an expense deductible. And we'll do that right after this.
We have only scratched the surface of today's show. Please stand by, as Barry G. Fowler will be right back with Tax Talk for You. As an owner-operator, you already spend too much time away from your family. Stop spending time doing paperwork. Go to truckertaxtools.com, a solution built specifically for truckers. Truckertaxtools.com makes your life run smoothly. Let's get back to Tax Talk for You with more Tax Talk. Once again, here's your host, Barry G. Fowler.
Hey, welcome back. Now, what makes an expense deductible? Well, according to the IRS, in order to be deductible, it needs to be ordinary and necessary expense for your business. Now, all the things we've talked about are ordinary and necessary expenses. Now, what other items can you find that you could actually make become ordinary and necessary expenses. See, some people don't think about personal supplies. So not all personal supplies are considered tax deductible. And again, it's got to be considered ordinary and necessary. They have to have a business purpose. So here's some examples. Uniforms. See, shirt has my logo on it and everything. It's a deductible business expense. So we consider uniforms something that you're doing that you only can use in the truck. Now, if jeans and stuff like that wouldn't be considered ordinary and necessary, they're considered to be personal items and isn't going to be tax deductible. I guess you could put your logo on the back pocket and maybe that works. Might be a good one for the plumbers. Gloves that you're using at the truck. Boots, especially like steel-toed boots that you'd be required to wear or something. Showers, motel expense. So even though you could probably sleep in your truck, if you went and stopped at a motel and you sleep in a motel, it would be a tax deductible item. You really have to think about it, and keeping the IRS's words and thought process, which is really hard to do when you start talking about the IRS, isn't it? Ordinary and necessary, isn't it? If you think about it that way, it's easier to decide whether or not an item is tax deductible. Communication expenses. I mean, you may not think about, your cell phone and the internet, your radio, CB radio in your truck. Also things like your subscriptions to different things that you use within the truck. Yes, you can your ELD and things like that, but what about your YouTube TV or some of the other platforms that you may be using while you're in the truck? Or maybe you have a specialized GPS that you want to use. Those all become ordinary and necessary business expenses and, tax deductible. So those things that you'd be able to use. Now, some people get into factoring. Now, factoring, if you don't know what it is when you take your receivables or your invoices and sell them to somebody else to collect and get the money up front. Factoring is sometimes a hard thing to get away from doing, because once you get started and you're used to getting that money right away, where some companies pay you in maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 60, 90 days, and you can't survive waiting for an invoice to be paid, 30, 60, 90 days out. And that being the case, a lot of people go and factor, but you'd be able to take and deduct that factoring fee. And these fees range anywhere from 0.5% to 5% per invoice. Sometimes they've seen them go as high as 10%, depending on invoice volume, client's credit worthiness, and whatever industry you may be in. And then, the reserves are not deductible unless they pull the money back to cover a claim. Maybe an invoice wasn't paid. Maybe the invoice ended up having to be discounted for whatever reason. So you would make sure that you pulled that back as well as an expense. So those reserves sit as an escrow or a reserve account on the balance sheet. And then once you receive the money, then you would be able to include that in your income at that point. Other costs of factoring you get to write off is your application fee, maybe your check card fee, wire transfer fees. And then if there's a termination fee, all this is deductible there for you. I've seen advantages, and I'm not a good proponent of saying, hey, you should factor. But sometimes it works really well. And then especially sometimes in the trucking industry where you can send over the information to your factor and they will actually do the invoicing and everything for you. And you get your money right away, and they collect over the period of time of 30, 60, 90 days, whatever the company's terms are paying at. And it helps you because you're not having to deal with the invoicing or the collections. And sometimes that can be a total pain while you're in business, and not just in the trucking business, but any business that's out there. So this is kind of what we go through and we talk about with people at Truck to Success. Now, one of the other things we do talk about, because once you've done all of this and you've gathered all these expenses and you have it in a nice format that is readable, you can then take a form that OOIDA has on their website. And if you go to OOIDA cost per mile, that's one of the forms that they have out there that is on their website that has a nice little spreadsheet that you can use to determine what it's costing you to operate your truck per mile out there. And that's great information. Now, everybody in business, I know this is specific to trucking, but you've got to determine what is the cost of doing business. And in trucking industry, it's as simple as knowing, what is my cost, per mile. You're going to be looking at how many loads you've run, how many miles did you run, and you can do this on a month-to-month basis, year-to-year basis, and determine it. You're going to be able to come in if you know how many loads you did and how many miles you did. You can also look at how many empty miles you ran. So if you're deadheading or something, you should keep track of that as well. You can come down to your average mile per gallon. With all your fuel costs for the year, you can get to your average price per gallon. If you've looked at the receipts and track your number of gallons you use, you can put in how many gallons, and then how many gallons of fuel, diesel fuel, reefer fuel, so forth, to be able to determine all this. And then you'll be able to deduct, then looking at all your expenses, get down to an exact cost per mile. So it's a great worksheet. So if you go to, like I said, you can go to OOIDA. It's easy. Just go into Google and do a search or whatever search engine you're using and go OOIDA trucking tools cost per mile. And then it'll get you over to that cost per mile worksheet. If you have a problem, you can email us at info@truckertaxtools.com. Again, info@truckertaxtools.com. And we'll get you over to that cost per mile worksheet as well. Hey, it's my pleasure always being here. I love answering questions from you. If you got questions outside of that, just go over to truckertaxtools.com, go to our contact page, send us the questions. We're more than happy to help you. If you got an IRS problem, we can help you with that too at taxationsolutions.net. That's taxationsolutions.net for tax relief. Hey, as I said, I enjoy being here. Time flies when we're having fun and we're talking taxes with you. Make sure you get over to Tax Talk for You, Tax Talk, the number 4, the letter U.com. Subscribe over there or follow us over there so you never miss an episode. And we'll be right here talking taxes every Monday on W4CYRadio.com. So online radio, connect with us, be here. Don't ever be late, because if you're late, you're going to miss something good. Tell your friends, tell your family, tune in and join us right here at Tax Talk for You. Go to taxtalkforyou.com. We'll see you next Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, right here at W4CY Radio. Have a God blessed and glorious week.
Are you an individual or business that wants to understand taxes and how they affect you? Are you looking for specific tax advice for self-employed, business owners, and truckers? Are you behind on taxes and your bookkeeping? Are you dealing with the IRS and ready to have some relief? Then you need Tax Talk for You, hosted by tax and trucker expert Barry G. Fowler, EA. Tune in 10 a.m. Eastern Time every Monday right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Don't forget to check this and past episodes at taxtalkforyou.com. See you next week at W4CY.com.